Happy New Year. Welcome to Arise News. You're watching the Global Business Report. Rhoda Sodiri here, coming to you from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. And if you're watching on your mobile device in Nigeria on the Arise News website, arise.tv, or on YouTube, that's thanks to the telecommunications sector. Now, it's arguably the most consequential sector to Nigeria's economy. In the third quarter of 2024, according to data from the Bureau of Statistics, the telecom sector contributed the third most activities to GDP, approximately 14%, after crop production and trade. Digging further into the data, looking at real GDP growth for the sector. If you look at the ICT sector, you have four subsectors: telecommunications, publishing, motion picture, sound recording, music production, and broadcasting. As you can see from that table, the growth in real terms from the first quarter of 2023 through to the third quarter of 2024, none of the subsectors come close to telecommunications. We even got a bar chart which shows, I think, telecommunications is in orange while the ICT sector is in yellow, and the telco sector is by far the sector that has the most growth in the subsectors when it comes to GDP growth for the third quarter of 2024. Now, in our year-end report, our Poetry Slam 2024 on monetary policy in Nigeria, we spoke to economist Bismarck Rewane, who listed cost-reflective tariffs as one of the top priorities for government to revamp the economy in 2025.
I also believe that this economy can achieve growth above 3 or 4% if those things happen, including, more than anything else, the liberalization of the tariffs of the telco companies. Because you have to have telco investment to have the digital revolution. So because you need skills, you need technology to increase output. And that technology is dependent on, one, the telcos being able to invest, and the power discos having to invest. If those two happen, then you will see an economy that will begin to limp out of the current situation.
Arise News also spoke with the Minister of Communications, Digital Economy and Innovation, Dr. Bosun Tijani, who said cost-reflective tariffs are part of the conversation, but there's more needed in making Nigeria's telco sector more competitive.
In 2025, towards the middle of the year, you will start to see a lot of activities around actually building out this network. And you also start to see improvement, significant, not just minor improvement. You start to see significant improvement, because what we've also done is to also conduct a study. That study, we're going to be seeing the result in the next 1 or 2 weeks, on the sustainability of our telecommunication sectors. What are the things we need to do to ensure that we can support them to be a lot more sustainable? Beyond just the conversation that has been out there about increase in tariff, which is what everybody is talking about, we think, yes, there may be a need for it, but there's so many other things that we need to do as a country to ensure that that sector is competitive. And beyond just supporting them to be competitive, that government must also invest in digital infrastructure as well.
All right, joining us to discuss further, we are very happy to have Mr. Karl Toriola, who's the CEO of MTN Nigeria, largest telecommunications company in Nigeria by subscribers. Good morning to you, sir. Happy New Year. You are our first guest on the Global Business Report of 2025. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Rotus. Happy New Year to you, and I like the hairstyle.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lots to discuss today. You've heard Bismarck Rewane on the private sector side saying that cost-reflective tariffs have to be a top priority for government. You've heard Dr. Bosun Tijani on the public sector side, although fair enough, he did come from private sector, him saying that there is more to it than just tariffs. Is there a balance to be struck here? What's been your view here on this tariff situation?
There's absolutely a balance to be struck. I think the debate is really about the sustainability of the industry and what it does for the Nigerian economy as a whole. I think the federal government has been very supportive through the course of 2024. With significant structural changes to support the industry. One of them is the Critical National Infrastructure Bill, which protects telecoms infrastructure as being critical and gets all the security agencies behind this. Another is addressing the indebtedness of the entire sector, of the industry. We've been put to task on quality of service obligations, and it's been made extremely clear that we'll be put even more to task in the course of 2025. So we've seen a lot of support from the government to really make this industry sustainable. The vision of the Honorable Minister Dr. Bosun Tijani to roll out 90,000 kilometers of fiber is a significant initiative that's going to really accelerate digital penetration. But we do have a problem on sustainability, and that's been very well recognized by the authorities. And we believe it's in the process of being addressed.
Okay, fantastic. Now, there's so public side, private sector, there's a third side to this, which is Nigerians, which are facing cost pressures. And, the question of course is whether or not this is a good time. We did have engineer Benga Adebayo of Alten, Association of Licensed Telco Operators, and here's what he said back when we had, back, I think this was an op-ed from April. He says, "We fully understand and appreciate the financial stress that Nigerians are experiencing today. Cost of living is the single most significant factor in most people's daily lives, but those people are still able to enjoy the benefits that connectivity brings at the price they paid before these challenges became so acute." Maybe it's an obvious question since you're both kind of on the same side here, but do you agree with that? And also, what would be your response to, I guess, the whether or not this is a good time for that to happen with the cost of living pressure?
So look, I think we're all on the same side. Us, the policymakers, the regulators, our chairman of Alten, Mr. Adebayo, and the industry. And we're all on the same side because we're concerned about a few basic things. One, telecommunications is a fundamental human right these days. And a critical element towards driving an economy. And if you don't have a sustainable industry, it's going to affect your economy and the well-being of people. Yes, everyone in Nigeria has gone through difficult times in the last few years due to economic challenges, inflation, devaluation, et cetera, et cetera. But the challenge that we face, and we're not talking about profitability in the industry, we're just talking about sustainability. Profitability will come on a longer term basis. But the challenge that we face is if you imagine a company that maybe 4 or 5 years ago earned ₦1 trillion, let's call it ₦1 billion for simplicity, and was making maybe 10% profit, so 100 billion. The total cost put together was 900 billion. Subsequently, 2 or 3 things have happened. One, the devaluation of the currency. Official rates have gone from about 420, 450 to about 1,550 odd at the end of the year. So that has driven our cost structures up drastically. So in paying for diesel has gone from pre-COVID times from 200-300 naira to 1,000 plus naira. Petrol has gone up several fold. The cost of power generation, the cost of procuring raw materials, what we call raw materials is a lot of things, batteries, fiber cables, base stations, towers, et cetera, to actually roll out and maintain these networks. We pay software licensing fees for these networks. Those costs have gone up astronomically. So you see in this hypothetical situation of a company that makes a billion naira a year and pays 900 million, sorry, I'm getting my numbers mixed up, in costs. Those costs have gone up to like 1,600, 1,900. So the costs that we're expending are actually exceeding our revenue, even though we are seeing revenue growth. And there's no way that the industry can continue to sustain itself and provide the required quality of service under this structure. Now, we've put forward requests of approximately 100% tariff increases to the regulators. I doubt they're going to approve that quantum of increases because they're very, very sensitive to the current economic situation in the country. But we're hopeful and optimistic that the realities are staring us in the face and the right decisions will be taken for the sustainability of the industry. Fantastic.
Now, for the average Nigerian on the street who complains about network issues, connectivity, drop calls, internet, and so on and so forth, I want you to try to connect the investment of the private sector in the sector to the service outcomes. Again, I want to go back to Dr. Bosun Chidai. Before I do, I think we have this chart here on broadband internet penetration from the Communications Commission. Between November 2023 and October 2024, the highest I think we got within that period was in July, 44%, right? So here is the minister talking about, connectivity and I guess investments being needed to improve it. Let's take a listen.
For people to truly enjoy quality connectivity, you will either have to rely on private companies, the MNOs, the infracos, to put their private funding into building expansive and extensive network for connectivity within the country. But the challenge with that approach, which is the first approach, is that businesses would only invest significantly where they are sure that their returns can be guaranteed almost immediately, or at least in a short to medium term sense. But the other option, which is the common option that you've seen in many progressive countries, is that government will have to understand and, of course, put its own skin in the game, knowing that connectivity is now nearly an important resource that every citizen should have access to, regardless of where you find yourself. And the quality of the connectivity in question has to be up to a certain level. And what you've seen is that government will then invest in that backbone that will allow businesses to be able to now transmit and run seamlessly and provide the quality of service that people want to see.
So I really would like for you to speak to that as the player in the sector that he's referring to, this connection between the amount of investment needed, and I guess for you to make that investment, as he said, you need to get those returns back. So can you speak to that in terms of quality of connectivity in the nation?
So I think there's multiple questions in what you stated, and there's multiple comments from Dr. Bosun Tijani, and I think it's spot on. We need all parties to come to the table to provide the quality of service and the depth of penetration of internet that we need in this country. The quality of service is dependent on many things, one of which, of course, is the ability of the telecommunications operators, the private telecommunications operators, to invest on a sustained basis over the years. And yes, they do want to see a return because they are for-profit enterprises. The environment we operate in is a significant influencer of what happens to the quality of service that you experience. So everything from power outages to sabotage to our fiber, we've had some experiences where our fiber manholes are actually being burnt.
Wow.
We've been gotten a lot of support from the security agencies on that. I must make that clear. Security issues, landlords shutting down sites within the lease period, those all affect us. But the manner in which we act as a responsible citizen, our customer centricity is a big influence of that. But I think what Dr. Bosun Tijani is also speaking to is that there's underlying backbone infrastructure that can also support both the quality of service and the penetration of internet and digital services into the country. And building that out at the scale that we need, we're a nation of 220 million odd people, needs a lot of players, private sector, public sector, people with a long-term view on capital. Because if you're talking about things like fiber infrastructure, unlike the mobile technology that sees a payback of 2 to 3 years, fiber infrastructure is 7 to 10 years upwards. So there's a lot of players that need to come together to really achieve this utopian land that we have a vision for telecommunication services in Nigeria.
I do want to get to foreign exchange and the challenges that have been faced. And I'm glad when you speak, you say us, the private sector, because I'm going to bring up you and also another player in the sector. Let's bring up your 9-month 2024 earnings, just to highlight service revenue. 33% growth there. Data actually exceeding voice. I see traffic there. Data up 42.1%, voice 9.8%. Subscriptions did come down a bit by 0.9%, 77 million. But then, that's that number at the bottom left there, the net FX loss, 904, and I believe realized was about 400 billion of that, and the unrealized about 500 billion, which led to a loss after tax of 514 billion. And then I do also, I guess we'll talk about your CapEx ex leases, 217 billion, down about 27%. But I do want to bring up, we did have the CEO of Airtel Nigeria on speaking to this very issue a few months ago. Let's take a listen to the same matter on FX losses on what he said as well.
You've seen in declared results, in Nigeria alone, we suffered FX loss of about $700 million, close to $800 million, 770. That's only from, and that's the one we describe as exceptional. If you go to the one we describe as normal, there's another $300 billion that we didn't describe as exceptional. So meaning in Nigeria alone, the effect of the foreign currency swing is actually $1 billion. That's what it is.
Wow.
And that's why you see the losses that you see.
So, this is widespread. How is this, as far as the FX situation, impacting operations going out into the future? He's talking about your own balance sheet and your own operations.
Look, the numbers speak for themselves. Great to see Segun. Caught up with him in a few social circles over this Christmas period. But numbers speak for themselves, and they're pretty similar between us and Airtel. And we're the two largest operators. Now, if we have an outlook that's not sustainable, imagine what's happening to the smaller operators. What Forex devaluation does to us is does two things. One, with foreign exchange liabilities which we have on our balance sheet, those could be foreign exchange loans or lease obligations. Every time there's a shift in the exchange rate, we have to make provisions for those liabilities. And that's what leads to the FX losses. So that's one aspect of it from a balance sheet perspective. But from an operational perspective, we also have a real true cost of doing business. And both are very real costs. So if we acquire a base station, let me just speculatively, it's not that quantity, but not that amount, for $100,000, 2 years ago, it would have costed us 40-something million naira. Now it's 160-something odd million naira to acquire the same base station. If we're procuring diesel, and even though we outsource our Telcos, we're effectively still paying for it, and paying for diesel at a rate of 300 naira. Today we're paying for diesel at a rate of 1,000, 1,100 naira, 900 naira with the advent of the Dangote refinery, etc. And that all impacts our ability to pay our bills. So we're not talking about profitability. We are talking about a situation of an existential threat to the entire industry. We're the biggest players, ourselves and Airtel. If we are struggling with these kind of cost structures, there's no way the rest of the industry will not experience the same. And the truth is, this just doesn't affect the large operators. Every part of the ecosystem that works backwards from there is affected by exactly the same thing, because they've all seen their cost risen. They've all seen their profit margins go into negativity. Whoever you may be, you can be a supplier of all types to MTN, and you experience this. So significant impact of the Forex losses, both from a balance sheet, from an operational cost perspective. Margins have shrunk and actually gone into negativity. It's impacting the economy. It's impacting our ability to continue to create jobs. Directly and indirectly, MTN is accountable for over 2 million jobs in this economy today. And what happens when this kind of things happens is the industry constricts, which means employment constricts and a commercial activity around the industry constricts. So it's a critical aspect of this. But look, it sounds like I'm blowing the alarm. I think the message is well received. I think we're working as a coordinated team, clearly under the supervision of our regulator and the policymaker, Dr. Bosundi Tijani. And I think we're going to fix this problem. It's not a problem which we're going to fix away with a magic wand. It's going to be progressive. And there are multiple solutions to fixing the sustainability of the industry, many of which have already been executed. The authorities are very sensitive to the plight of the Nigerian people under this economic hardship. And I think we're going to be there in 2025.
Fantastic. Now, still on FX, though, I mean, there have been some projections of some more stability, FX stability in 2025. Are you in that camp? Do you see more stability some stability this year?
I think 2024 was an exceptional year. I don't expect any repeat of that kind of volatility. And it was driven as a result of moving towards a much market liberal free foreign exchange rate. So we do absolutely expect more stability in 2025. Optimistic, not excited to expect that there's going to be a reversal, but we don't need a reversal. We just need a relatively stable, even gradually declining currency. We can manage that. We can find other ways and other sources of efficiency. The volatility of 2024, where we went, I mean, I won't repeat all the rates from 900 odd closing in 2023 in January, February, March. It just went a bit haywire. That's difficult for any business to manage.
Understood. I do want to talk about your numbers, and I guess what you're expecting from voice, data, the type of returns, because going back to those figures again, it has really been incredible seeing how data has overtaken voice. What are you expecting in the future? Are you going to lean more on data revenues to rise more? Still going to lean on voice? How are you seeing that dynamic working out in terms of?
I think I was here probably 2.5, 3 years ago when I said that in the next 18 months or so, data would exceed voice, and that has happened pretty much spot on. Data is still going to be the primary engine of growth, and there's many opportunities in the data space. So yes, no doubt, data is going to grow and be the driver of growth. We're seeing 40% plus. The volume demand in Nigeria is exceptional, and that's going to be sustained going forward. We are still growing in voice, an exceptional market from that perspective. There's still a lot of opportunities in voice. There's opportunities in rural coverage. And most of the data growth has been really driven by mobile data. Okay, we're seeing consumption per subscriber in Nigeria, which is matching the Western economies. What we also see as a huge potential opportunity is the migration from mobile data to fixed data. And we've started to pursue that very aggressively through our 5G, 4G home broadband solutions, But now we're really driving aggressively into the fiber to the home, fiber to the building, fiber to the office space, because there's going to be an offload, not immediately, not in the short term, but we're talking about 3 to 5 to 7 years of data from mobile to the fixed solutions which you find in your homes, etc. So we're positioning ourselves to capture that opportunity and really take the opportunities of growth for the next 10 years, the outlook for the next 10 years on data consumption. And it's going to be exponential. We're very optimistic about the potential of this economy, of the Nigerian consumer, of their data demand and their digitization.
Just on that point, on the fixed thing, I've heard some feedback of folks who get text messages saying you are in an area that is, part of this of broadband from MTN. Do you want, and then a number to call to get connected? Is that part of what you're doing, where you're reaching out to people, telling them if they're in zones where that broadband connectivity is possible, and they can then reach out to get that done? Is that part of the strategy to expand that fixed broadband aspect of that?
Absolutely. We've been quietly rolling out fiber. We intend to be the undisputable leaders in fiber to the home in Nigeria, and we've been doing so. And as you get into, the nature of fiber infrastructure rollout is it's extremely expensive with a long payback. So you do it progressively and selectively, but in some ways the mobile network started like that, with the major commercial capitals and then the state capitals, and then went out to rural areas. So we're selecting the locations that have high potential, where the infrastructure opportunities are present. We're rolling out fiber in those locations, and we're progressively broadcasting to customers who are in those locations to subscribe to our services, understanding fully well the pain points of the customer to serve them, because it's one thing to connect them. Is that connection stable? Do they have the ease of payment of their monthly, annual subscriptions? If there's a problem with their box, etc., are they able to get a solution? And how long is it from when they place the order to when that connection comes live? Those are critical KPIs which we look at to really serve the customer to the best of their needs and distinguish ourselves in the market.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. So the reason why I asked was because just looking at your CapEx from your 9-month numbers, capital expenditure ex leases, I think it was 270 something billion or so, get the numbers up, but I think it dropped by about 27%. Is that connected to the whole profitability thing, the FX challenges and so on, to where if, did I get that right? Yes, 217 billion. But I've seen that number higher in prior years. So can you speak to that? Because that is part of this expansion that you're talking about, right?
So yes, like I said, 2024 is an exceptional year.
Right.
Without knowing exactly where the currency was headed, and other aspects that influence our industry, we were measured in the execution of our CapEx. You'll see a pickup towards the end of the year. And of course, there was a scarcity of absolute naira to buy Forex to roll out CapEx.
Right.
Aside from that, in the first 3 quarters of the year, brilliant financial and treasury team, we were able to pay down about $400 million of our foreign exchange liabilities, loans, trade lines for LCs that we had open, so that we minimized the volatility on our balance sheet going forward, and also took off this obligation of foreign exchange. So if there's any future devaluation, however measured or tampered it may be, it doesn't affect our balance sheet. So there was both a combination of being measured in how we deployed CapEx to ensure that we did so in a responsible manner that protects the integrity of the business, the sustainability of the business, and also managing our balance sheets to be a lot more robust and sustainable.
Fantastic. All right, so to round off, you have said 2024 was quite an exceptional year. We kind of compiled a few things. It was a topsy-turvy year for the telecommunications. You had the NIN SIM rollouts. There was, the few things there. You had the undersea cable that was cut, which impacted everyone. So data did revenues passing voice. There were FX losses. Smartphone adoption grew. Tariff review debates intensified. Just putting all this together and then looking ahead to 2025, what is your outlook for the telco sector?
To be honest, I'm very excited about 2025, very optimistic. I was actually sharing a few messages with my board of directors and expressing this same kind of optimism. And why is that? I think we've cleaned out a lot of the problems for our business and for our industry in the course of 2024. You mentioned one, SIM registration. SIM registration is over. Every SIM card in Nigeria is now associated to a NIN. And no new SIM card is registered without a NIN associated. So the whole subscriber identity management has been successfully addressed between NIMC, The NCC, that's been very supportive, but very, very kind and strong-willed on this. They asked us to disconnect at some point in time 11 million subscribers and the operators themselves. So that's out of the way. There are structural issues around industry debt, not just within the industry, but by other players towards the industry that have been addressed at the end of the year. We've gotten a lot of support from the government, Critical National Infrastructure Bill. We've had a rearrangement of spectrum by the NCC, sometimes to the advantage of other operators, which is good. That's good. We need the entire industry to be healthy. We've been able to lease spectrum from Intel. We announced that, I think, 2-3 days ago. So I think we've really put a great foundation in place for a great 2025. I'm optimistic that probably not as much as we want, but we will see tariff increases to support them when that's really up to the authorities. And we're going to work constructively together to drive quality of service, internet penetration, and customer centricity through things like 5G, fiber to the home, and of course continued expansion of our rural connectivity across the country. So it's going to be a good year.
Fantastic. And I know I'm supposed to end the interview there, but very quickly, I know you said earlier you wanted, it's a 100% increase in the tariffs and the authorities may not grant that. What will work for you? 50, 60, 70%? You're going to put a number to it?
I shall leave that to the discretion of the authorities.
Mr. Karl Toriola, the CEO of MTN Nigeria, thank you so much for being our first guest in 2025. And we hope to have you back to look at the telco sector later on as 2025 progresses. Thanks for your time.
Great to see you, Ruth.
That's fantastic.